Hi, my name is Semaan and I'm a licensed psychotherapist. If you've been to my channel before, thanks for tuning back in. And if this is your first time joining me, thanks for being here. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that is important for us to maintain healthy relationships. And the topic today is boundaries. So if you want to learn more about what boundaries are and how to implement them in our day-to-day life, then stay tuned. Before we get started today, let me just remind you to give this video a thumbs up if you found yourself to be enjoying it, to leave a comment with any questions, feedback, or suggestions for me, and subscribe to my channel and click the notification bell so that you get notified whenever I post new content. Let me start by defining personal boundaries. What are they? Personal boundaries are limits we set for ourselves in order to maintain healthy relationships. Personal boundaries are healthy when a person can clearly and comfortably say no, while at the same time is able to maintain close and intimate relationships with people. First, I'm going to share with you 5 tips of healthy boundaries. And later on in the video, I will share with you 4 ways in which you can implement those healthy boundaries in your everyday life. The first step for healthy boundaries is to know your limits. You don't want to find yourself in a relationship where you give and give over and over again to a point where looking back, you'd realize that all you do is give and you never get anything in return. It's so important to zoom out and really recognize what your limits are and where it is important for you to stop giving. When you give and you never have anything in return, it's easy to develop negative and resentful feelings towards that person. And if we're talking about a relationship that's important to you, such as a romantic relationship or a relationship with a family member, then we want to make sure resentment and negative feelings are kept at bay. The second tip for healthy boundaries is to know your values. For example, I value family over everything else. So it's really important for me to be able to say no to a friend of mine, for example, who keeps trying to steal away time away from my family. So I want to be able to tell that friend, no, not right now, I'll reschedule with you because I value family so much that I'd want to spend more time with them instead of that friend. The third tip for healthy boundaries is to listen to your emotions. It's important to listen to your emotions, both the positive and the negative ones. The negative ones sometimes can feel like resentment or anger towards a person. Let me just say that you can love and care about a person and still have negative feelings towards them. That's just a normal part of our human experience. Oftentimes, resentment or anger can come from a place of feeling like you've been taken advantage of in that relationship. That's why it's so important to listen to your emotions and not try to bury them or ignore them. Because once you acknowledge that you have those feelings, that's when you can start working on improving that relationship that means so much to you. The fourth tip is to respect others while at the same time making sure you recognize your own self-worth. That's so important because it's a fine balance. We want to make sure we're not taking advantage of other people's emotions. We're not acting at the expense of other people's mental health. But at the same time, we want to be able to ask ourselves if we're showing ourselves the same amount of respect that we show other people. When we are able to balance those two things, I think we can really start working on healthier relationships and have better personal boundaries in place. The fifth tip for healthy boundaries is to always remember the two-way street balance in relationships. Relationships are all about give and take. Ask yourself if you feel like you're always giving in that relationship and not really getting anything in return. And vice versa. Do you find yourself always taking from that person in a way, not necessarily intentionally, but just always asking for their energy, their time, asking them to compromise, and you not giving a lot back in return as well? Those may be signs of poor boundaries too. So we really want to know if we are able to balance the two-way street in those relationships so that we can develop healthier personal boundaries. So now that we talked about the 5 tips for healthy boundaries, let's move on to talk about the 4 tricks to implement healthy boundaries in your everyday life. First of all, let's just remember together that people are not mind readers. So for the tricks to work, we're going to have difficult conversations with some of the people we care about if we're hoping to improve the boundaries for a better and healthier relationship. The first trick to have a difficult boundary-related conversation with a person is to plan ahead. Think about what it is you want to tell that person. Think about your feelings, think about your needs that aren't being met, and think about how you want to convey that message. Planning ahead will give you the sense that you're prepared and you're confident to have a difficult conversation with a person. The second trick when you're having a conversation about healthier personal boundaries is to remain respectful throughout the conversation. I know when emotions get heated and when we feel a certain way, we may be anxious during a conversation, it's easy to find ourselves yelling or using hurtful words or using language that we know will push the other person's buttons. But for the sake of healthy boundaries, try as much as possible to stay respectful and not to yell, and to not use passive-aggressive means either, such as the silent treatment, because all of those will be counterproductive and won't get you what you want anyway. So what's the point of having the conversation in the first place? The third trick for a healthy boundary conversation with a person is to be as confident as possible. Confidence and arrogance are two very different things. When you're confident, you're speaking assertively with a very neutral tone of voice. So we're not speaking too loudly and we're not speaking too quietly. Another tip for confident conversation with someone is to maintain really good eye contact. We're not trying to stare the person down or scare them off, but just try to maintain adequate and appropriate eye contact as much as possible, because that exudes confidence. The fourth trick is to compromise. Remember my tip from earlier that boundaries and healthy relationships are a two-way street? Compromise is so important because the goal here is not to win an argument. It's not to win a conversation. We are trying to find a happy medium that will serve you and will serve the person you care about in a way that will develop the relationship so that it becomes healthier and that you have better boundaries with that person. So remember to compromise. And what I mean by that is when you do have that difficult conversation with the person, try to listen to what their needs are as well. So use your listening skills just as much as you use your effective and confident communication skills. I'd really love to hear from you what tips and tricks you've used, what's worked for you and what hasn't, and I would love to hear your feedback on whether you enjoyed this video or not. Thanks for tuning in today, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next one.